I got to go back and watch the tape, and I think I have a much better idea. Definitely some good, some bad, but felt good to be back out there. Excited for next week, continue to get better with these guys.
Now, back to Willard and Dibbs on 95.7 The Game.
You threw out an interesting question. JD in for Dibbs all week. You threw out an interesting question with regard to what the 49ers are now going to do on Saturday with regard to the reps, the time. Like, they sort of said Trey would get most of the first half, Sam would get most of the second half. Trey got all the first half, and Sam only got some of the second half. Like, Trey had a lot more time than Sam Darnold, which brings up an interesting question.
Yeah, the way that they've done it to this point in this competition through training camp and even before, I think, in the OTAs and in the minicamp is Kyle Shanahan's always tried to make it even as possible in terms of the reps. So that would lead me to think, well, if Trey played the whole first half and Sam got the third quarter, let's say, or third quarter plus, then Sam Darnold would get the start on Saturday night and play a half, and then maybe Trey would get the rest of, whether it's the whole second half or
third quarter,
and maybe Brandon Allen gets some time, maybe Brandon Allen gets less time. It just, again, everything we're trying to decipher from everything, but it did kind of make me wonder, was there any meaning toward Trey? I mean, Trey obviously needs the reps, regardless of the competition, but it kind of made me wonder, has Kyle seen enough of Darnold to where he doesn't feel like he has to see as much of Darnold?
Well, what do you think? How would you answer your own question?
I think he's trying to get Trey out there as much as he could, as quickly as he could, and so that doesn't surprise me. I think it was more about just giving Trey an opportunity, the first opportunity, to play, and if he needed to knock the cobwebs off, just go through it. I'm not ready to say I think it means he's seen enough from Darnold to know what he's got yet.
No, but I could see it meaning that he has more current faith in what Sam can do in this situation.
Or there's a level that he wants to see Trey hit, and he's going to give him some runway to do that.
Or the, I guess, conspiracy theorist would be, look, a lot of starters didn't play, but let's get Trey Lance out there with at least most of the second unit, and maybe he'll play well, because if he plays really well, this could drum up interest around the league.
Possible. And look, there are people who believe that Sam Darnold was brought in with a wink and a promise. Like, hey, if this thing's anywhere close, it's yours, meaning the backup job is going to be yours. Again, I'm not as far down that path as others may be. I do think it's still more of an open competition. Wow. But the 49ers have, the way they've handled the reps throughout the offseason, if they're going to continue the way that they have, that would mean Darnold starts this game, assuming they don't play Purdy. Darnold starts this game, which I think Purdy's probably playing the third game. Darnold would start the second game against Denver and play a half, and then Trey would get what was left after that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know if you guys caught it. Shanahan also said post-game last night at the end of one of his answers, we played it earlier, we can listen to it again. He said at the end it was difficult to not put Trey in there to start the third quarter as well. He felt like he wanted to, in other words.
Which was because A, he was starting to play better, or
probably,
B, because he hadn't seen yet what he was hoping to see.
Maybe some of both.
I think it was more. Yeah. I think it was more that he started to play. Maybe to your point, he started to play better. Let's let people see him play better.
Let's let people see him play better. Yeah,
because that has been a theme, and I mentioned this earlier. That has been a legitimate theme at practice. Trey has started slow. Like that's to the point where that's something that, like, if Trey ever did have to play a lot, it's like, okay, is he just a slow? Is he just a guy that's going to be a slow starter? He was a slow starter the game in 2021 that he started. I was 20. It was the Houston Texans.
The Houston game, sure.
He was slow. He played.
Yeah, he had a bad first half.
And he was pretty good in the second half. And so that's something to where if he ever has to play a lot. Now, it was the opposite in Chicago last year.
Well, Chicago was weird.
We can throw that out.
Yeah, Chicago was super weird.
Anyway, just something to jot down the fact that.
But see,
once he gets going at practice, he, like I said, Darnold's been the opposite. Darnold's been really good at the beginning of practice. I'm generalizing, but most of the days Darnold's been better at the beginning and Trey's been better at the end, and it's been about even.
Here's one thing that, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I feel like I'm reading on you right now when you say that if it keeps going the same way it's been, then Darnold will start the full first half on Saturday, and then it will be Trey Lance. I don't think you think that's what's going to happen, though.
I'm not sure. I genuinely don't know. I feel like it might change.
And our other, like not Brock Purdy, but our other starters going to play Saturday, because I think that's significant. Because let's see Trey Lance with the actual offensive line in front of him. I don't know.
I don't think it's that.
I don't either.
I think if those guys are going to play, if other starters are going to play, they're going to play with Brock, and that's going to be one whole thing. And then they're all going to be gone.
Or maybe just a smattering of some other ones. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the plan is with McCaffrey or Debo or Ayuk. Are they playing at all?
I would think
in the preseason?
I would think no.
I mean, I wouldn't.
I mean, the 49ers have enough high-end players to where you don't want to see something happen. Oh, but again, I think that goes against what Kyle Shanahan... Like, I think Kyle Shanahan at his core is much more like his dad than Sean McVay when it comes to... Like, I think Shanahan wants to put...
I think he wants to
put guys out there, but then he also thinks, God, we've had such bad injury luck. I better not put him out there.
That's fair. Yeah. We're streaming live on YouTube. You hear us referencing it all the time and chatting with everybody who's there. We have a real good time throughout the shows. So head to youtube.com/957 The Game. You can watch us live. You can see what a handsome man JD is. If anybody swears, you get to hear it. Like and subscribe so it's easy. You can just pop it open and it's right there. 95.7 The Game content on YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. All right, let's get back out to the phones. Dave in Napa on with Willard and JD. Hey, Dave, what are you doing?
Hey, guy. Well, I'm just waiting for my double-double at In-N-Out. Not a bad day.
Not at all. Good for you.
Yeah. Hey, great show. Really appreciate you guys. Always entertaining. Always good takes. And hey, I'm not a Trey Lance apologist, but Shanahan for the optics has a lot invested in the draft capital to get him. And kind of following up on your kind of nudge, wink, wink to Sam Darnold. Do you think the reason he kind of started last game without even a series with the starting offensive line and kind of a paper shred offensive line was like, hey, let's send him out there as a sacrificial lamb, make him not look good, so that transition to Darnold is a little bit easier.
Yeah, Dave, I think that's crazy. Dave, thank you very much.
No way you would do that.
And I've heard not just that take, I've heard that take, and I've heard takes like this before. And I think that they're, like, I wonder if you understand, like, this is just a radio show, so it doesn't bother me. Do you know how offensive that would be if Kyle Shanahan heard you say that? Do you know how offended he would be at the idea that somebody he drafted, another human being who he really likes, because he's really well liked inside the 49er hallways. The idea that he would send him out there to either get hurt or look bad or have something go poorly in his career, I think is just wild. I think it's so wild that, like, people who I think are smart human beings, like Dave, you sound like a smart guy, that you would think that Kyle Shanahan would do something like that.
Yeah, no chance.
Like, that's essentially evil. Do you know how much is on the line for Trey Lance? To have him go out there and purposefully make him look bad?
No way.
Oh, that's a brutal idea.
Also, if there's one person who has just as much stake in Trey Lance's career as Trey Lance, isn't it Kyle Shanahan himself?
Although less so now.
Less so now, except for if something doesn't go right with Brock Purdy's career. Like, the Trey Lance thing is it's gonna land on Kyle's lap.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because regardless of how the competition ends up, if Trey Lance is on the 49ers roster and has to play, the expectation is that he better be, if he isn't good, then that's on Kyle.
Absolutely.
So that isn't dead until he's off the roster completely.
Your Darnold thing that you brought up about the wink and a promise. I don't know if there'd ever be a promise in anything in the NFL, but I've long had this question, and I've posed it before on this show. But if you could give me a private room and someone in this conversation to sit down with one-on-one and be like, you have got to give me the real answer. One of my shortlist questions would be to either Sam Darnold or his agent. And the question would be, what made you say yes? Sam Darnold is a quarterback with experience, therefore options. He finished the year well last year in Carolina. The idea that there wouldn't be a line around the block for his backup services is rather odd to me. And the fact that he took the 49er offer immediately, lickety-split, right at the start of the free agency period, immediately begged a question, which is, why would you say yes to here when you know that supposedly you have got a battle of all battles just for the second job on your hands, and you're going against the emotion that surrounds Trey Lance in order to win that job? That's a very fair question.
I think we need to go back to March, because that was literally days after Brock Purdy had that surgery, that at that point was 6 months until he's fully good to go and able to play.
That's
and I think
fair.
he had it on March 10th, which was exactly 6 months from September 10th, which is the opening day in Pittsburgh. And so, and remember, that had to be pushed because of some swelling, and it was kind of like, why didn't you have that a month ago? And there was I think an early belief that maybe things were going to be behind schedule. They wound up being way ahead of schedule. Point being, though, as it relates to Darnold on March 17th or whatever it was, somewhere in that week, he's thinking, hey, Purdy might not be healthy. I can be the starter. All I got to do is beat out Trey Lance.
Maybe.
I can be the starter. I think that's part of it.
But starter for
remember
how long?
The backup job for the Niners, though, was basically with an inroad to the starting job because Purdy might not be healthy.
I get that. I think it's a valid point. However, I would say back, like, even with all the uncertainty and the fear surrounding Brock Purdy and surgery, never was it anything but a major underdog, the idea of him missing the year.
Well,
so even if he's not ready for week one,
maybe he's got to miss 6 weeks, and
Okay.
Darnold could go out and go 5-1 and look pretty good. Like, that would help Darnold's career.
Maybe.
Even if Darnold goes back to the bench. But I think Darnold and his agent could make the case, hey, if I get 6 games with this talent and this offense, in this system, maybe I go 6-0 or 5-1, and they let it ride with me.
Yes. Again, though, all major maybes.
I don't think he was worried about. I'll say that I don't think he was worried about beating out Trey Lance.
But that then actually answers my question. That would be my question.
That to me would have been a no. Like, if I'm a competitor, I'm just going to put we all think we're good at what we do, right? If the competitor in me, putting myself in Sam Darnold's shoes, if it was posed, you can beat it. You think you can beat out? I'd be like, I'm better than Trey Lance. Like that. Like anybody that plays at the level of Darnold would think that.
Or did Kyle Shanahan lean forward and go, "You can beat out Trey Lance"?
Possible.
Also
possible. There are people that believe that this thing is, hey, Sam, if you come in and don't stink, and he comes in and isn't awesome, like where it's so obvious, like there's a world where Trey comes out and play action, deep ball to Bell, touchdown, 80 yards, first play, where it's like, and Trey's just slinging it all over the field and he's awesome, and it's like, well, sorry, Sam, like he's been great, like that.
He needs a Justin Fields game.
But either that
have you heard the world? The world has decided that Justin Fields is now the next big thing. He threw 3 passes. They all traveled 1.5 yards. And people took off down the sideline and scored. And everyone's like, it's going to be amazing this year. That's what Trey needs. Well, that's what he needs. That's what the Niners need.
But as far as that, but I think Darnold would look at it like, I can beat this guy out. And I think, and maybe Kyle made it clear. I do think the injury component was part of it.
Probably part of it.
And I think even farther down on the list, Mark, is the fact that 3 quarterbacks have played for the Niners in 4 of the 6 years that Kyle Shanahan's been the head coach.
Is that a good or a bad thing? Sounds like I'm walking to my death if I go out there.
What it would tell me if I'm Sam Darnold is, even if I'm the 3, I might end up playing.
End up in there.